The city breathed in the wet, metallic way it always did after a summer storm. Inside the silent, climate-controlled interior of his Bentley Mulsanne, Julian Croft watched the world through rain-beaded glass. At 42, he had built an empire from nothing, turning disruptive tech ideas into global phenomena. He understood algorithms, market saturation, and the psychology of consumer desire. But the messy, unpredictable terrain of human emotion? He had long ago filed it under inefficient variables in his mental ledger. The car, a fortress of polished walnut and Connolly leather, was stuck in the post-theater traffic on Shaftesbury Avenue. Julian sighed, the sound absorbed by the profound quiet. His driver, a stoic man named Arthur, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Bit of a logjam, sir. An accident up near Piccadilly, I believe." Julian didn't reply. His attention was snagged by a scene playing out in the recessed doorway of a closed bookshop. A young woman, her clothes a collection of damp, layered fabrics, was hunched over a small, wiry-haired terrier. She wasn't just sheltering the animal. She was using the edge of her sleeve to meticulously dry its paws, one by one. Her hair, dark and plastered to her skull, hid most of her face, but the set of her shoulders spoke of a fierce, focused tenderness. It was an act of such profound, illogical care in the face of her own obvious discomfort that it disrupted Julian's cold analysis of the world. A group of loud, well-dressed men spilling out of a nearby pub noticed her. One, his tie loosened and his face flushed with alcohol, nudged his friends. "Oi, love, that rat got a pedigree? Looks a bit stringy for my tastes." His friends guffawed. Julian felt the familiar wash of disdain, but it was quickly followed by something sharper, colder, a protective spike of anger. He saw the woman's back stiffen. She didn't cower or look away. Instead, she slowly lifted her head, and even from the car Julian could see the emerald flash of her eyes. She fixed the man with a gaze of such pure, unadulterated contempt that his smirk withered, and he turned away, muttering to his companions. That was the catalyst. The idea bloomed in Julian's mind, fully formed and utterly arrogant. It was an experiment, a wager against the chaos of feeling, a way to prove, once and for all, that the higher sentiments were merely chemical illusions. "Arthur, pull over here," Julian commanded, his voice calm. "Sir, we're quite in the way. Now, Arthur." The Bentley glided to the curb, its immense presence an affront to the shabby doorway. Julian reached into his jacket and retrieved a simple but thick black billfold. He stepped out into the damp London air, the chill immediately seeping into his Brioni overcoat. He approached the doorway. The terrier let out a low growl. The woman looked up, her guard instantly raised. Her face, now visible, was smudged with city grime, but her features were fine, her eyes a startling, intelligent green. "Hush, Pip," she murmured to the dog, her voice lower than he expected, textured like rough silk. Julian held out several 50-pound notes. "For you. And the dog." She looked at the money, then back at his face. Her expression wasn't greedy or grateful, but weary and deeply suspicious. Why? "Because it's a miserable night. Because some men are idiots. Take it." She shook her head, a slow, deliberate motion. "I don't need your guilt-absolving charity. Keep it." Refusal. An anomaly. Julian's model of human behavior stuttered. His eyes fell to a small piece of cardboard propped against her knee. The handwriting was neat, almost calligraphic. Temporarily misplaced. A story for a hot drink. A song for a sandwich. The transfer of possessions felt like a surrender of his very identity. The weight of the wallet, the constant pull of the phone, the silent judgment of the watch, all gone, leaving a hollowed-out sensation that was both terrifying and liberating. Isolde tucked his former life into the deep pockets of her oversized coat, her expression unreadable. "Right then," she said, her voice all business. "First, we find you a different coat. That one might as well have a target on it." She led him away from the main thoroughfare into a labyrinth of narrower, darker streets, where the grandeur of London faded into damp brick and the smell of stale beer. Their destination was a charity shop bin around the back of a pub, where she expertly sifted through discarded garments, pulling out a worn, navy duffel coat that was only slightly too large for him. "Here, it's dry at least." Julian shed his Brioni overcoat without a second thought, leaving it folded neatly on top of the bin, a bizarre, silent funeral for his old life. The next few hours were a brutal crash course in street-level economics. Isolde showed him how to spot the telltale signs of a shopkeeper who might be persuaded to part with day-old bread, which pub doorways offered the best shelter from the wind and the gaze of the police, and how to find public taps for water. It was a world of tiny victories and constant calculation. A found pound coin was a triumph. A security guard's sharp word was a strategic defeat. As dusk began to bleed into night, the theoretical discomfort of his situation became a grinding, physical reality. The hunger was a persistent ache, the cold a deep-seated chill that the duffel coat did little to repel. His feet, accustomed to bespoke leather soles on carpeted floors, throbbed from the relentless pavement pounding. Isolde finally led him to her spot, a surprisingly dry-hidden alcove behind a cluster of industrial bins in a quiet mews. It was shielded from the rain and, more importantly, from prying eyes. She had a rolled-up foam mat and 2 thin blankets stashed there. "This is it," she said, unrolling the mat with a practiced flick. "Home." The word was uttered without a trace of irony. Julian sat, the cold of the concrete seeping through the foam. He looked at his hands, already grimy, and then at Isolde, who was settling Pip for the night with a quiet word. In the deepening gloom, her profile was sharp and resolute. The despair that had threatened to overwhelm him earlier was now tempered by a dawning, grudging respect. This wasn't just survival, it was a life, pared down to its most essential elements, and she was the undisputed master of it. The wager, he realized with a jolt, had suddenly become infinitely more complex. He wasn't just studying a subject, he was an apprentice in a world he had never dared to imagine.